Thanks so much, Layli. That was a very sweet intro. I hope that was recorded because I'm sure I'll play that at my eulogy. So it's our pleasure to be here. Tonight's format will be a musical fireside where we talk a bit, tell some stories, and share some music from Brett's band. And this is actually a really special year that commemorates the 100th anniversary since the passing of Abdu'l-Baha. So he'll be the subject of our exploration this evening. I know that many of you are familiar with Abdu'l-Baha. You'll maybe enjoy hearing these things again. And for those of you who are hearing about his life for the first time, I'm sincerely, truly excited to introduce him to you. He has a very unique station and role in human history, and I love him very much. And hopefully through this presentation, you'll see why. Why not only Baha'is, but people all around the world from every walk of life have grown to love him and look to him as an example for how to live our life and how to put faith in action. So that's where we're coming from today. I'm going to show you a picture of him so you can see what he looks like. So can you all see that? All right, then. Maybe Vida, if you wouldn't mind reading that quote. Vida? Okay.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to switch. I don't know what happened here.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else can read because I lost the quote. I don't see it.
Would someone else like to read this quotation?
Okay.
I can read.
Okay, I got it. Sorry, technical difficulties. My name is Abdu'l-Baha. My identity is Abdu'l-Baha. My qualification is Abdu'l-Baha. My reality is Abdu'l-Baha. My praise is Abdu'l-Baha. Thraldom to the blessed perfection, Baha'u'llah, is my glorious and refulgent diadem, and servitude to all the human race is my perpetual religion.
Thanks, Vida. So I wanted to start with this to first of all show you an image. This is Abdu'l-Baha, obviously later in his life. And this passage is quite mysterious. And that's where we wanted to start and say that tonight's exploration will be really to dig into what his station and role is. He says here that his reality is Abdu'l-Baha. So he was born in May 1844 and his given name is Abbas Effendi. And Abdu'l-Baha is a title that he took later on in life, and translated, it means servant of Baha. Now, the word Baha would then refer to his father, Baha'u'llah, who many of you know to be the founder of the Baha'i Faith. So Abdu'l-Baha is Baha'u'llah's oldest son. And as we can tell from the name, the title that he chose, he is the servant to his father. And it's actually a beautiful image that his whole life was in service to the teachings of his father and to humanity. I'm going to turn it over to Brett to say a few more, and I'll stop sharing.
Abdu'l-Baha was a global revolutionary. I'm just going to read a passage and then I'll explain a bit. In the Middle East, he led a household that practiced the equality between men and women. In Europe, he spoke in churches about the oneness of all religions, and in America, he emphatically practiced and preached about racial unity. He lived most of his lifetime in exile and in prison, but was still able to affect thousands of lives across multiple continents, races, religions, and in later years, he was able to travel to the West and meet with all strata of society, from inventors to politicians to royalty, from academics to religionists, but he was always happiest meeting with and being in the presence of the meek and the lowly. Abdu'l-Baha was not a prophet, but he perfectly reflected the teachings of his father. So much so that he was given the title, the Mystery of God. The Mystery of God. In the writings we find a description that says, in Abdu'l-Baha, the incompatible characteristics of a human nature and a superhuman knowledge and perfection were blended and completely harmonized. And finally, Abdu'l-Baha affirmed time and again that he was a herald of peace and reconciliation. He was an advocate of the oneness of humanity and an agent calling humanity to the kingdom of God. So this takes us to 1844. And this is a very special year, as you all know, for Baha'is, because this was the beginning of a new revelation that came to humanity. And on May 23rd, 1844, two very special things happened. One was the Bab, who came to prepare the way for Baha'u'llah, and he was the herald, and he had his own message. He declared himself as a messenger of God, May 23rd, 1844. And there was many, many people around the world, but in particular in Iran at that time, that were searching for the return of someone or the promised one or a great teacher. There was this time of search. And so the Bab told Mullah Hussein that he was the person that people were looking for. That exact same night, Abdu'l-Baha was born. And so these are the two things that happen, and for Baha'is both are very, very mysterious and very interesting. So I'm going to start with a song that I've played for some of you before, and it is about this sacred night that happens, and it's called Reflection of Him. In every age and time, a holy one appears, bringing love and peace, a messenger of light and life. From all that is revealed, creation is renewed to bring new life to all, unfolding the divine plan for us. And all he would strive to know is Him, long to become a reflection of Him, of Him. A traveler to Shiraz, searching for the promised one, fulfilling all his hopes. His journey finally comes to an end. He sat before his feet, enchanted by the words, revealing streams of light. The morning sun dissolves the dark of night. And all he would strive to know is Him, long to become a reflection of Him, long to
Thank you,
Back
Brett.
to you, Mo.
Back to me. Well, isn't that interesting that Abdu'l-Baha was born on the very night that the Baha'i Faith started? I mean, coincidence or not? This is all part of the big, wonderful divine mystery that makes up Abdu'l-Baha. So we will be jumping through time. I hope you can follow this and you're not like only chronologically based, because we organized this in themes, and what we wanted to share right now a little bit is about that special relationship between Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha. So Baha'u'llah we consider as this manifestation of God. He was the direct mouthpiece of God, expressing the will of God for the peoples of this day. His son was Abdu'l-Baha. And Abdu'l-Baha was able to not only expound on or explain and give more color and description to Baha'u'llah's teachings, but he also put them into action. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this relationship was really sweet. Ever since Abdu'l-Baha was about 10 years old, Baha'u'llah called him the master. I don't know about you parents. I certainly didn't call my kids master when they were 10. And this is just a funny story that I guess in Persian, the word for sir is the same as for master. Now my Persian friends are gonna help me with that, but the word is aka. Yes? Vita, I'm looking at you.
Aqa.
Aka, okay.
Yes.
So when people would use the word aka, referring to sir, Baha'u'llah would say, no, 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 no. There is only one aka. Who is the aka? Abdu'l-Baha is the aka. And so from a very early age, Baha'u'llah was telling everyone around him that there is one aka, because when he would eventually die, the world would turn to Abdu'l-Baha for guidance. So this is the relationship between them. Baha'u'llah said, Abdu'l-Baha was a shelter for all humankind. He was a shield. He was a stronghold for all who believes in God. A stronghold, I think, is like somewhere where you go like a fortress. So he's a fortress for all who believe in God. He is the most great favor, the most perfect bounty. And not only that, but Baha'u'llah said that everyone who came into contact with Abdu'l-Baha, if they saw him, if they heard him, they were blessed. Imagine that. Abdu'l-Baha was the very first person to see something in his father and believe in him. So we can say he was the first Baha'i. And that's the song that's coming up that Brett will sing about. But if you allow me to jump forward in their lives, when Abdu'l-Baha was an adult, he lived across the bay from Baha'u'llah. So we're now in present day Israel. Abdu'l-Baha lived in Haifa and Baha'u'llah in Akka. Abdu'l-Baha would come to visit his father every now and again to bring news, and he would approach the mansion of Baji on horseback. Baha'u'llah, meanwhile, was sitting up on the balcony looking out, anticipating the arrival of his son, Abdu'l-Baha. Now, as soon as Baha'u'llah saw his son approaching, he would call out to everyone, the master is coming, the master is coming, hasten to attend him. And he would send people out to go greet him. And now from Abdu'l-Baha's side, as soon as he started crossing the fields that were before the mansion, he would dismount from his horse. Friends, this was a symbol not only of respect, profound respect from son to father, but it also was a symbol of servitude, Abdu'l-Baha. I'll turn that over to you, Brett.
So, yeah, so going back a few years in 1852, Baha'u'llah, so the Bab had been martyred. The Bab had been killed for what he was teaching, and there were thousands of people that were becoming followers of the Bab. And so the religious authorities and the political authorities at the time, they were trying to figure out how to suppress this movement that was really just like a firestorm across Iran. And they were scared of it. They were scared of it. They were scared of change and these new teachings, and it was blasphemy and so on. And so as a result, many thousands of followers were killed. And Baha'u'llah in 1852 was becoming someone of, well, he was born into a family of prominence already and high stature. And so he was operating in circles that had a lot of power and so on. And because of who he was and the family that he was born into, they couldn't just outright kill him like they were doing with many of the other followers of the Bab. But they found a way to imprison Baha'u'llah. And so they imprisoned him in what's called the darkest pit. And it was a horrible prison in Iran. And he was imprisoned there for about 9 months, 8 or 9 months. And it was in this foulest of places that Baha'u'llah received a revelation, his own revelation, an intimation from what he refers to as the Maid of Heaven, which in my understanding is just a symbol of the Holy Spirit, in which Baha'u'llah received his message, that he was a messenger of God. So he is in this prison, in this dark pit, and he receives this revelation. They treated him horribly. They bound him with chains, and these chains, I remember doing the conversion, were about 110 pounds, and they were wrapped around his neck, and they cut into his bones and his skin, so he had scars for the rest of his life. And he was there in that condition for many months. And he suffered like this for about 40 years, where he was continually put in prison or banished from land to land, until he eventually ended up in the prison city of Akka, under strict orders to stay within the prison and so on. And then he died there. So he was a prisoner for the majority of his life. And Abdu'l-Baha, being a loyal son and loving his father, was also exposed to this life of hardship and was a prisoner with his father. So when Abdu'l-Baha was 9, he was missing his father. And I always tell this story that I like this story because when I wrote this song, I was thinking about the fact that while these are messengers of God and these are incredibly superhuman people, they have that physical side, they have that emotional side, and they do suffer. And we know that throughout religious history when we read the stories in the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Quran and the Baha'i writings, we know that there's a lot of suffering. Even the messengers of God have suffered. And Abdu'l-Baha was not immune to that either, and he wanted to be with his father. At the end of the day, he was a 9-year-old child. He wanted to be with his dad. And so when Baha'u'llah was in prison, Abdu'l-Baha went down to visit him, and he demanded to see his father. He demanded from the guards to see his father. And so they were going to take him down to the prison. Baha'u'llah was 3 floors below the surface level in just this dark, dark, cold, dreary pit. And Baha'u'llah saw that they were coming, and he told them to stop. And he said, "Take Abdu'l-Baha up. I don't want him to see me in these conditions." And so they complied, and Abdu'l-Baha waited, and his father came out. And Abdu'l-Baha, seeing the sight of his father had changed so much, being in that dark dungeon and subject to all the cruelties, that he had completely changed, and he looked older and frail. And Abdu'l-Baha couldn't contain the emotion that he felt, and he fainted. And after he fainted, he woke up, and he writes that when he saw his father, he saw that something had changed. And he was, as Maureen said, he knew that his father something had happened, something very powerful had happened in that prison, and that he recognized in his father that he was a messenger. So this is really a sad story about a boy that loves his father and a father that loves his boy. Far away. I'm sorry. I think I'm in the wrong key. Far away, a distant land, a distant time. There's a boy, a little child, only 9. A loyal son, his father's cause becomes his own. And the attacks rain down on his home. Just a boy and the mother all alone. Wrongly accused, the father's gone, taken away to a dungeon with no light of day. The boy is strong and he tries to carry on, his heart bleeding for his father's song. How can they do him so wrong? How many nights, how many days the child cries, the child prays for him to come home again. His soul's awake, he's feeling weak, little tears stream down his cheeks, but he must be strong and carry on. Far away, underground, the father's torn, his heart bleeding for the love of his son. His only wish to comfort him and dry the tears, and to hold him in his arms, to shield the boy from harm. How many nights, how many days the child cries, the child prays for him to come home again. His soul's awake, he's feeling weak, little tears stream down his cheeks, but he must be strong and carry on. Well, the child goes to see him, but do not bring him in here. The galling chains, the sorrow and pain, well, he falls to the ground and faints. His heart would be the first to see the change he recognized. A different man he would come to love. Oh, the light within his eyes.
Thank you, Brett. We'll continue our exploration of Abdu'l-Baha. There's a lot of description of Abdu'l-Baha, and so our words tonight really won't do justice, but I do encourage you to read stories of him and by him. So many of the accounts are from people who loved him, and they say that love filled him and flowed out of him and embraced everyone around him. I have a description from a Western soldier. He said that Abdu'l-Baha made an impression on all who met him by his dignity, friendliness, and his aura of spiritual authority. His blue-gray eyes radiated a luminosity of their own, and his hands were beautiful in their grace and healing magnetism. Even his movements were infused with a kind of radiance. So this is a wonderful blend of human and divine qualities that we see in Abdu'l-Baha. I think many of you know that one of the main purposes of the Baha'i teachings, Baha'u'llah taught that we are on the threshold of a whole new era for mankind. This is a new day. And I heard this wonderful talk once, and it was by Tom Price, for those of you who are familiar with him. He was speaking about when you create something new, you have to create a prototype first, from which everything else is modeled after. And he was saying that Abdu'l-Baha was like this prototype. So here is a new era for mankind. Here is a new body of teachings that builds off of all the divine teachings. And we have this very unique figure of Abdu'l-Baha, who, with his extraordinary knowledge and qualities of character, was able to show the translation of Baha'u'llah's teachings into action. So we call Abdu'l-Baha the perfect exemplar, like example. And I thought I could share a few short anecdotes to show that while he is the exemplar, the ways in which he teaches us are often quite unexpected. So I thought it would be fun to think of how Abdu'l-Baha treated his enemies. He had enemies. People hated him because of what he stood for, of course. So this is the story of a man who was from Afghanistan, who hated Abdu'l-Baha very much. And he took every opportunity he could to speak poorly of Abdu'l-Baha. And he would say, he's an imposter. You know, why do you speak of him? So this man, whenever Abdu'l-Baha was around, he would hold his cloak up over his face so that his face wouldn't even be defiled by seeing Abdu'l-Baha. He lived in a mosque, and himself, he was very poor. So Abdu'l-Baha often would provide food or clothes for him. But he gave no thanks to Abdu'l-Baha, and he persisted in his enmity towards him. This went on for quite a while. And even when this man fell ill, Abdu'l-Baha brought a doctor for him. So at the same time, while the man was holding his his arm out for his pulse to be taken by the doctor with one hand, he used the other to cover his face with his cloak from Abdu'l-Baha. Friends, this persisted for 24 years. Abdu'l-Baha continued in his love and care for the man, and the man continued in his hatred and enmity towards Abdu'l-Baha. Then at last, one day, he showed up at Abdu'l-Baha's door, and he fell down and said, "For 24 years, I have done evil to you. for 24 years, you have done good to me. Now I know that I have been in the wrong. Now Abdu'l-Baha had him stand up and they became friends. What a powerful message for us. And a second story, again with an enemy of Abdu'l-Baha. There was a certain man in Akka who also despised Abdu'l-Baha and would turn his back whenever Abdu'l-Baha was around. But one day they were walking down a very narrow passageway and they were forced into close proximity with each other. And so the man couldn't exactly get away from Abdu'l-Baha. What do you think Abdu'l-Baha did? He tapped the man on the shoulder and said, "Wait a few moments until I speak." And then Abdu'l-Baha said, "However great may be your hatred of me, it can never be as strong as my love for you." And the man was startled and awakened and made to feel the unconquerable power of love. Over to you, Brett.
I just have a short snippet here, and then I think Maureen's going to pull up some slides, and we'll move to the travels, Abdu'l-Baha's travels to the West. Yeah, and I would normally play a song here, but in the interest of time, I'll just talk a little bit. There's so much to take in, as Maureen said, about this person, right? And so for me, I think the three things that we would want you to walk away with when you're saying, well, who is Abdu'l-Baha and why is he special? One is that he was the appointed and chosen successor of Baha'u'llah. And the reason that this is so important is because it's the first time in religious history where there's been a documented, written appointment of a successor of a messenger of God that has really helped to keep the unity of the community alive. In many religions of the past, as we know, the minute the messenger of God dies, there's a split, there's division, there's misinterpretation. And then it just keeps dividing and dividing and dividing. Whereas Baha'u'llah, in his own will and testament and his own written note, said that Abdu'l-Baha should be my successor. So this was great. So Abdu'l-Baha became the head of the Baha'i community. And in turn, Abdu'l-Baha, in his will and testament, wrote who would be the successor. So we have this, and this is the covenant. We talk about this covenant that is very strong and impregnable. It can't be broken. So there's not many, many different sects of Baha'is around the world. So that would be one thing. The other thing is Abdu'l-Baha was given the special privilege of being the interpreter of the words of Baha'u'llah. So what does that mean? So we have, as we know, Baha'u'llah wrote over 100 volumes. There's just thousands of verses of rich writing that came from the pen of Baha'u'llah. And after he died, many of the Baha'is would come to Abdu'l-Baha and ask for clarification or say, can you help explain this? What does this mean? So Baha'u'llah had that ability to interpret perfectly the words of Baha'u'llah. He was given that ability. So the center of he was called the center of the covenant. That's one of his titles, the successor of Baha'u'llah, and the interpreter of his word. And he did that. He also wrote over 30,000 tablets in his lifetime. And these were epistles, these were letters, these were tablets, these were prayers, 30,000. So that, in addition to what Baha'u'llah wrote, is just a myriad of verses that we have access to. And they're continually being translated into English and other universal languages. And then the last thing, as Maureen has mentioned a few times, is that Abdu'l-Baha is the mystery of God and he is the perfect exemplar of what it means to be a virtuous human being. So we believe that he had the ability to take all of the virtues, these God-given virtues, and he has perfected them. And so we turn to him for these examples and all of these anecdotes that we're talking about. There's so many stories of where Abdu'l-Baha shows, well, what does generosity really look like? What does sacrifice look like? what does service really look like? And he does it through his actions. He was not one to sit in his room and just talk about it. He led by example. And again, going back to that original verse that Maureen read, he says, my perpetual religion is Abdu'l-Baha. And what that means is my perpetual religion is service to glory, service to humankind. And so that was him. He was happiest when he was with the lowly and the poor. So those are three things I just wanted to really emphasize: center of the covenant, interpreter of the word, and the perfect exemplar. And now, turn it back to you, Mo.
Okay. So Brett, maybe I'll show some slides and then you want to sing The Trust Among Us?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go right to some slides. Just a few slides here, friends, to show you that okay, so in 1912, Abdu'l-Baha was able to travel to the West, to Canada and the United States for 239 days. His whole life he had spent in exile and imprisoned. And so starting in 1907, there was the Young Turk Revolution, which then freed all political and religious prisoners. And so Abdu'l-Baha was finally free, but he was an aged man. So he came to New York, and this image that you see up here is taken from the Bowery in Lower Manhattan, New York. It was the original slum, you can say. And when Abdu'l-Baha came to the United States, he met with the who's who. He really, he had all said and done over those 239 days, he had 400 public gatherings. And some of those gatherings would be thousands and thousands of people. They were very curious to hear what this religious man from the East had to say. But what gave him the most joy and the thing that he felt were the most significant of his public appearances were coming down, for example, to the Bowery and meeting with the poor. And as he would shake their hands, he would press coins into their hand. Let's see what the next. Brett, did you want to read that?
Yeah, sure. You must assist the poor as much as possible, even by sacrifice of yourself. No deed of man is greater before God than helping the poor. Spiritual conditions are not dependent upon the possession of worldly treasures or the absence of them. So this is a song called The Trust Among Us. And Abdu'l-Baha referred to the poor as the trust that we have to take care of. A fearless servant of the poor, this prisoner freer than us all, good ground made ready by the rain, and it pours down on him. He gave all he had away. Easing of hunger and pain, he is everywhere. The world will never be the same, for his love remains with us. Abdu'l-Baha. He heard the crying of his trust, the midnight sighing of the poor, the weighted down and bound in chains. He clothed them in his love and gave all he had away. Easing of hunger and pain. He is everywhere. The world will never be the same, for his love remains with us. Abdu'l-Baha.
These are some newspaper articles. He did come to Canada, and you know, you can see some of the headings. It was quite the stir. This heading says, "The time has come for humanity to hoist the standard of the oneness of the human world, so that dogmatic formulas and superstitions may end." That was April 21, 1912. So he really, when he came in 1912, it was on the cusp of the First World War. And he was talking about how humanity must rid itself of all forms of prejudice. He gave warnings of, you know, the dire consequences if we didn't. And then shortly after he returned from his journey to the West, of course, the war broke out. So a lot of his teachings was about the oneness of the human family. This is the central teaching of the whole Baha'i dispensation. He talked about our obsession with materialism. He thought that our civilization had advanced materially, but not as much spiritually. He said the people of America have a great capacity for the acquisition of spiritual qualities, but they are immersed in material affairs. They're like machines which move uncontrollably. They move but are devoid of spirit. They will attain perfection when the spirit of divine civilization is breathed into them. I think for the sake of time, Brett, we can move to your song. We have so many other stories, but sitting and listening for an hour, it feels like a long time. We barely got going, Farouz. I would love to do this again some other time and tell a few more anecdotes, because as I said, these were not just words on a page, they were really actions. You know, yeah, why don't I turn it over to you, Brett?
I just read what Valerie wrote, and I just have to say, Valerie, I am so sorry to read that, and we will say prayers for you and this family friend. It's very sad. Bye. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we'll just one last song, and I think this is a good one to end with. It's a little more upbeat, and some of you know it. And the one thing that I think is important to remember about all of this is that at the end of the day, religion, the home of religion is the heart. That's what Abdu'l-Baha says. And I think that when we look at the stories and we look at how he impacted people, he is always transforming hearts wherever he went. That's what he did. He never tried to force, he never tried to push. He just was all about love. And I think that's the greatest lesson that he brought. So I love this quote. He says, "The home is the religion. Home of religion is the heart. The intellect is good, but until it has become the servant of the heart, it is of little avail." I love that. So this last song is written in the spirit of a woman. Sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts. By the name of May Maxwell, and Emily Dragoman wrote this song with her in mind. And we were imagining what it would have been like to meet Abdu'l-Baha. And there was, especially at that time, well, not especially at that time, but throughout the history of the Baha'i Faith, there's been so many women that have just embraced the teachings and have just done such amazing things. And May Maxwell was, of course, one of them. And she writes here about when she first met Abdu'l-Baha in 1899. She says this: "Of that first meeting, I can remember neither joy nor pain, nor anything that I can name. I had been carried suddenly to too great a height. My soul had come into contact with a divine spirit, and this force so pure, so holy, so mighty had overwhelmed me." So there's a song called Land and Sea. I'll cross land and sea to follow thee. Take me on a journey of love. Lead my steps aright by your light and your life, and fill me with the fire of love. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see, and I will follow thee. In discomfort or ease, I'll cross land and sea. I have heard your call and set out from my home. Restless and ablaze I will go. When my time has come and my service is done, let me circle around where you lay. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see, and I will follow thee. In discomfort or in ease, I'll cross land and sea. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see, and I will follow thee. In discomfort or in ease, I'll cross land and sea. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much to Brett and Maureen for that absolutely wonderful talk and the beautiful, beautiful music. It makes it, I feel like the combination of the words and the music makes it so lovely for the words to just sink in and to meditate on them and to really think on them. And I really hope that we can get a part 2 soon. Because I would love to hear the rest of it. So I guess now if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. Otherwise, thank you everybody for coming. But yeah, no, if anybody has any questions, go ahead.
feel like those on the call who are familiar with Abdu'l-Baha's life are mad at me right now for not even doing it justice. I didn't get to the end of what I wanted to say. And it's incredible. I just want to tell you that the life, the story, the lessons are, they're just really, I think, you know, just very inspiring. Don't be mad at me.
Part two. Thank you for that amazing evening. It was really uplifting, and I feel my soul is well fed now.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of the stories, the words, the music, just beautiful.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions about him? We could just look at what might be on your mind, any thoughts that came up, or things, any range, like from the very seemingly basic to anything more complex.
So, sorry, I was just thinking, in the history of religion, has there ever been a personality like Abdu'l-Baha, you know, that sort of we could sort of draw comparison to, or is this just a new gift of God for this day and age, that we have this, as you said, prototype and a perfect example to follow?
There has been no example that we can point to in the past. I don't know what'll happen in the future, but it's a very unique station. I mean, there's no comparison, because as Brett was saying, in other religions, there was no one to hold the teachings after the passing of that teacher, the manifestation of God. When they passed, then there wasn't that same authoritative voice that continued on. I was going to also mention the names Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha. They take a little bit of time to get used to. And I noticed that even we, the presenters, messed it up at least once. So, yeah. Baha'u'llah translates to the glory of God. The word Baha, I guess, is glory. And Abdu'l-Baha, as was mentioned, is the servant of glory. So Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha.
Can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah.
This is maybe more for Grace and Sao Yu, because I think it's always neat to sort of show this. So Baha'is, and actually many people from around the world, will go to Haifa, Israel. This is where the Baha'i Administrative Center is, the Baha'i Administrative Center of the world is, and it is where we go for pilgrimage. It's like a sacred place where we go, and many people on this call have actually been there and even worked there. And I wanted to show you just some pictures, because this is, for example, the Shrine of the Bab. So we were talking about the Bab, right? So this is where the remains of the Bab are now. This is where they rest. It's a beautiful, beautiful shrine. And currently, Abdu'l-Baha is buried in this shrine as well. I believe, if I get my bearings, I'm not sure. You guys might know better. But he is, so when you go to the shrine, there's one door that you go in, and it's very simply decorated. It's just Persian rugs and flowers, and that's really about it. It's beautiful. It's very reverent, very calming. And it is a place to go and to pray, to meditate, to reflect, and to connect, with Abdu'l-Baha. And then the other room beside it is where you would go to pray to the Bab. And the shrine of Abdu'l-Baha, of Baha'u'llah is also here. But I wanted to show you this. So they are now building a shrine for Abdu'l-Baha that is just dedicated to Abdu'l-Baha, and it is under construction. This was taken 3 months ago, so it's updated since then, but I'll just play a snippet. So this is a rendering of what it will look like. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that. It's quite a phenomenal piece of architecture that's happening right now over there.
Since we're talking about, the passing of Abdu'l-Baha, he died 100 years ago, but he had a funeral in Palestine, and 10,000 people came out. He was so well loved by everybody from every faith. And I mean, that part of the world is it's a very difficult part, as you know. And everyone came out, and it was like this beautiful display of what he had been teaching about the oneness of the human family and overcoming all forms of prejudice. And there they all were, apparently conflicting religionists out for his funeral. And I thought that was a befitting send-off for him, given his teachings.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the photo of the shrine in Israel. So actually, I was planning to go to Israel last May if COVID didn't occur.
No way.
Yeah, and that was part of my trip will also visit Haifa. And but unfortunately, maybe in the future.
Yeah, well, maybe when you do go, that shrine will be complete, so you'll be able to see it. That's amazing. Yeah. And let us know, because this people on this call, we all have friends over there, so we'll hook you up, get you a nice meal.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Were you going just to visit the Baha'i places?
No, it's also visit some other places in Israel. Yeah, but I know that there is the shrine in Haifa, so that was part of the stop. But unfortunately, didn't go.
Yeah, well, hopefully you will in the future.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, that part of the world is amazing. Maureen and I went there with the kids a few years ago and had a chance to go to Jerusalem and, God, where do we go? Sea of Galilee and all these places that are so, historical. And then you go and you actually see them. It's phenomenal. And then, of course, we had a 9-day pilgrimage. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, why don't we leave it there? It's so nice to see everybody. Grace, love seeing you. And It's been really nice to hang out with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank
so
you.
much.
You're welcome, guys.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you, the Smiths and O'Neill, this O'Neill Smith duo. Woo!
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Layli,
Thank
for
you.
amazing. Layli's such a good MC, eh? She's really
Anytime,
good.
folks.
Perfect.
I
I
love
want you to
gushing about my
MC.
favorite second parents.
Yeah.
We love you too, Layli.
Yeah.
You almost made me cry at the beginning, but
Yeah.
no luck
Oh, I
this
can do better than
time.
that.
You'll have to try harder next time.
You got to MC both of our funerals. We're down with that.
Oh, I'm there.
God forbid. Please don't talk about those things.
Mom hates talking about funerals.
I want to lock in a good MC.
You got it.
Are
You can
you,
give me a down payment. I accept check.
Happy thoughts, Layli.
Israel, Shah, you have to come and have a Persian dinner
Bye,
at
Helen.
our home, and I invite people to come and see you.
As soon as we all have 2
Can I
shots.
come too?
2-shot dinner.
Yes. yes.
Sounds good.
And we have Gazi here. Hi, Gazi. Oh, okay.
Done.
I'm sorry. John. Okay.
He's gone, yeah.
We
Bye.
had
Bye,
texted.
everyone.
Bye, Xiaoyu.
Bye.
guys.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Lots of love.
Yeah, Gazi had texted in the little box there. So
Do you know Gazi?
Yeah, that's Gaz, who has declared he's in part of the Baha'i community.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He
Thank
goes by Gazi.
Thank you so much.
Thank
thank you for asking us, and I'm hoping it was okay for the friends. You know, there's so much more to say.
Let me ask you a quick question, Maureen John. In case we wanted to book the second part of it, when are you available?
Most times just with a bit of advance notice.
Okay.
Yeah. This worked out well. I know that you had maybe some other plans lined up for this evening and they went through.
Yeah.
So like we're happy to do that, Firuz, if there's like another occasion where
Oh my God, sorry, I'm still recording. Oops.
it's okay.